Hello, it's Judith here with this week's video. Now, I've not absolutely got up off my sick bed to make this video, but I am not at my best, I must admit. At least I have a voice back. Back end of last week, I had whatever lurgy is doing the rounds at the moment, and it knocked me out for a few days. But I'm back and better every day. So, what's the topic for this week? Last week I talked about the past. This week I thought I'd talk about something a bit more specific that often comes up when dealing with past stuff, and that's relationships. They're not always the cause of past trauma, but they often are. And I think they're some of the most difficult things to deal with for a variety of reasons, which hopefully will become evident in this video. The one I think that's hardest is the parental relationship, the relationship we had with our parents. If we're lucky, it was a good relationship, not perfect, it can never be that, but it was a good relationship. And I certainly have realised since my parents have been gone how wise they were, which I didn't always appreciate at the time. And I'm lucky, and I know that I'm lucky for that. For a lot of people, it's not been so good. And I think the hardest thing is saying anything about your parents' behaviour, because it feels wrong. It feels as if you shouldn't criticise them. I mean, I think if they've been particularly strong disciplinarians, then, you know, actually criticising them is wrong anyway. I mean, it's sort of almost, you know, been built into the very foundation of your being that you can't do that. But even if it hasn't been that sort of relationship, I find people find it hard to talk about their parents. So they'll tell me a bit and then they'll say, well, they didn't know any better, or it wasn't their fault, you know, their parents were the same with them as they were with me, or, you know, they did their best. But and the thing that I use now is the thing that we often say about children, if you yourself are a parent. It's not the child that you dislike when they're being really difficult, really naughty. It's the behaviour. And it's the same with the parent. It's not your mother or your father that you are talking about. It is their behaviour. Now, of course, along with that goes, if you know about this stuff, their behaviour is their responsibility. But yes, they may well have had that behaviour built into them by their parents. At some point, the carrying it down through the generations has to stop. But I think the key message here is it's okay to talk about the things that your parents did, which you now realise weren't the best for you, or in many cases were very, very far away from the best. It's okay to talk about that. And it's not disloyal, and it's not disrespectful, and it's not something you're not allowed to do, because it's how they behaved that you're talking about, not who they were as people. Sibling relationships can also be, I'm an only child, so I can't talk personally about this, but they can also be amazing or horrendous. And again, we often get that reluctance to criticise. Well, it wasn't their fault. They were chosen as the favourite. They didn't ask to be, you know. Okay, so they got all the attention, but, you know, I was a bit of a naughty child. You know, it's excuses again. We try to find excuses for people that have hurt us who shouldn't have. And I think at some point we need to work towards the place which says these people shouldn't have behaved like that. These people, I can understand intellectually why they might have, and I can feel sorry for them because of what had happened to them, but they were the parent and they shouldn't have favoured one child over another. They shouldn't have done whatever it is to me. And of course, the worst thing, which I mentioned last week, I think, is the drip, drip, drip of emotional abuse, where you're ground down to feeling not worth anything very much. So it's hard to talk about it. People come to me who haven't spoken about it to many or any other people, and they find it really, really hard to do so. And maybe it takes a little time, but it is okay. It is okay to talk about it and to decide what you're going to do about it. As a child, you had limited choices about how you responded. As an adult, you can choose how you respond to your parents' behaviour then, maybe still behaviour now, and the same with siblings. Close friends are also interesting because, and I can think of a couple of instances of people who've come into my life and we've had a very intense, close relationship for a period of time that has ended quite suddenly. And these are always a bit troubling. I think I'm inclining to the view nowadays that people come into your life for a reason, for both of you. And when that's done, then the friendship is done. And I know that may feel wrong to some people who've, had close friends since childhood and they're still close friends. That's wonderful. And if that's in your life and you're happy with it, well, enjoy. But for a lot of us, we find it hard when somebody who is close to us then seems to be neglectful or even unkind or gossiping about us, particularly nowadays on social media. So again, that's a difficult one. I think if it's damaged you, you need to do some work on the damage. And again, going back to the thing that I say quite often, it's not what happens to you that matters, it's how you choose to respond to it. At the time, certainly when you were a child, you didn't know about this stuff and you didn't know how to respond. But as you are as an adult now, you can have a choice about how to respond. And if they're no longer in your life, you can deal with what's left, get rid of it, deal with it, move on. It becomes more difficult if they're still in your life and if their behaviour is still problematic. And that's a really hard one. Boundaries are important, really, really important. And ultimately, and I know some people who've done this, you have to make a choice that's the best for you, and that may be to just walk away, even if it's not what you want to do. If it's the best for you, if the damage that's being done to you is too great, then maybe that's what you have to do. But that's really, really hard. So as I said at the beginning, none of this is easy. It's not easy to work through. It's not easy to come up with a solution for it, particularly if it's still current. But certainly, if it's still current, think about boundaries. Think about where the stopping point is, and what you do at that point, or how you build that wall. So, you never get beyond that in the relationship. And that's different for everybody and for every relationship. So again, if any of this sounds familiar, I do not have all the answers. Believe me, if I did, I'd be very, very rich. And I would share it with you all for nothing. But I don't have all the answers. But I'm very happy to work through whatever's going on in your life or has gone on in your life, if this sounds familiar. Excuse me. Voice has just about lasted to the end. So that's me for this week. And I look forward to seeing you again, hopefully healthier and less croaky. And until then, you take care of yourself and keep away from whatever it is that's doing the rounds if you possibly can. And if you can't, then really, really look after yourself. Okay? Bye for now.